Everything comes from somewhere, as vague as that may be. But sometimes the origins of things can be surprising, like how bagpipes don't come from Scotland or pasta doesn't come from Italy. And then there's another level of surprising origins when you discover that multiple things all come from the same place. Number 10. Black, white, red, and green peppercorns all come from the same plant. If you've ever taken cooking beyond the microwave, then there's a chance you've dealt with peppercorns whilst making one of your tasty creations. Black pepper, arguably the most popular seasoning in the world next to salt, starts life as a peppercorn. But peppercorns come in a variety of colours, which include black, white, red, green, and pink. Surprisingly enough, the first four are actually all the same thing, and pink peppercorns aren't even peppercorns at all, so they don't really count. Green peppercorns are the unripe version of the fruit that come from a plant, actually a vine, called Piper nigrum. When these are picked and allowed to dry, they become black peppercorns. If they are kept in brine so they don't dry out, they retain their green colour. They can also be flash dehydrated or freeze-dried to keep that green colour as well. Red peppercorns are the mature fruit of the plant, and the red colour is from the outer hull or skin on the berry. If that hull is removed, a white peppercorn is what's underneath, so technically red and white peppercorns are the same thing, or at least they have the same ripeness. Number 9. Black, white, green, and oolong teas are all from the same plant. Word is that tea is the most popular beverage in the world aside from water, and there are also nearly countless varieties of it available, from orange pekoe to Earl Grey to chai and nighty night. But 4 of the most popular varieties, black, white, green, and oolong, all share one thing in common. They're all the same. The plant called Camellia sinensis can provide you with all 4 types of tea, depending on how the leaves are treated during the tea making process. Considering how different all of those teas taste, that's pretty remarkable. Green tea is made from fresh tea leaves that have not had a chance to suffer the effects of oxidation. They are heated soon after being harvested to stop oxidation, which allows them to retain the green color. In direct contrast to green is black tea, which endures the most oxidation of the 4 types. The leaves are allowed to completely wither, and then they're crushed to enhance this process. They turn black once they're fully oxidized. In the middle between black and green is oolong. This tea is semi-oxidized, sometimes out in the sun, and just slightly crushed or bruised. They may be between 8 and 80% oxidized. It's a decision that the maker of the tea will have to make, which makes oolong more of a personal recipe than the other kinds. White tea is harvested before the buds are even fully mature, and they still have little white hairs on them, and they aren't crushed or rolled at all. Number 8. Lychee, Ackee, maple, and many more plants come from the same family. Plant family trees can be somewhat confusing when you discover what's related to what, but the Sapindaceae family probably takes the cake for the most unlikely cousins. In this single family of trees, you'll find Ackee, the national fruit of Jamaica, the small, weirdly hairy fruits called rambutan, their spiky cousins Lychee, and smoother cousins longan. Guarana, a staple of energy drinks and a source of caffeine, is also in the family, as is the sugar maple, which is famous for maple syrup in North America. There are actually 1,600 different species in the family, and many of them have commercial value either for fruit, lumber, or other things they produce, depending on where in the world you find them. Number 7. Science, schizophrenia, and even shit have the same root word. Word origins can sometimes be very surprising as you learn the roots of certain words or what they may have meant in other languages before they were co-opted to English. It's rarer to discover that an abundance of words, many of which seem unrelated in current usage, all trace back to the same source. In this case, we're talking about a Proto-Indo-European word, skay, which means to cut or to split. The number of English words that stem from this source is baffling. Schizophrenia starts with skay and adds phren, which means wits or sanity, so the word technically translates to split wits. Compare that to ski, as in the sport, which comes from a Norse and or Old English term meaning stick of wood, which was reduced to the act of splitting that wood to make the ski, or again, skay. As pronunciations were tweaked across language and time, the hard sk sound was sometimes adapted to the softer sh sound that gave rise to the word shit. So how does that relate to cutting or splitting? Well, it's splitting from your body, so initially it was actually a polite euphemism and not something vulgar. Even science came from skay in the sense that splitting or dividing came to be discerning the difference between and then understanding things. No doubt it was a bit of a process to come up with that one. Number 6. Numerous world-class runners come from the same Jamaican town. There's an old saying that goes, there must be something in the water, and it's generally used when something unusual occurs multiple times in a small geographical area, like if a particular town had an unusual number of really tall people or famous artists. And you could apply that saying to Trelawney Parish, Jamaica as well, because the town and surrounding area have given rise to a truly unusual number of incredibly fast people. With a population of under 3 million, Jamaica is smaller than many US cities. Despite that, world-famous runners like Usain Bolt, Linford Christie, Donovan Bailey, Ben Johnson, Veronica Campbell, Brown, Merlene Ottey, Shelley Ann Fraser-Price, Sharika Jackson all hail from the tiny island nation, along with literally dozens of other world champions. Of those, Bolt, Ottey, Campbell, Brown, and many others come specifically from Trelawney Parish. In fact, 37 of Jamaica's 78 Summer Olympic medals were won by athletes from Trelawney, despite the town having a population of only 75,000. Number 5. Fuller, Trucker, and Walker as surnames all come from the same job of fulling. Once upon a time, a person's last name was a reflection of their profession. Family names like Smith and Miller and Farmer are pretty easy to figure out, but the names Fuller, Tucker, and Walker all have a unique origin in that they too all stem from a profession, but it's the same one. The name Tucker comes from the Old English word tucker, meaning to torment or to beat. Walker, on the other hand, comes from an Old English welker, meaning one who trampled cloth in a bed of lye or kneaded it to strengthen it. Now compare those to fuller, which was an actual job more properly known as a fuller of cloth. A fuller of cloth had to prepare clothing by cleaning it and thickening it by beating it in water, which was known as either tucking or walking. And that's how Tucker, Walker, and Fuller all came from the same source and essentially mean the exact same thing. The different usage of them seems to be geographic more than anything else, with Tucker in the southwest, Walker in the north, and Fuller in the southeast. Number 4. Dozens of names can be traced to Yohanan. There are countless websites that will help you name a baby these days, and many have lists of the most popular baby names from the prior year. But arguably, the most popular name in history is Yohanan. That's because of all the names that are derivatives of it, and the list is long. Yohanan is a Hebrew name, and it means God is gracious. At least 33 names can be directly linked to Yohanan, and many of them are very recognizable. John, Jack, Shane, Sean, Jane, Janet, Jean, Evan, Hank, Ivan, Juan, Giovanni, Hannah, Hans, and so on all come from this original name. Number 3. There have been at least 8 mathematicians named Bernoulli. If you've ever heard of Bernoulli's principle or Bernoulli's numbers or any of the 8 noted mathematicians who are named Bernoulli, then you are familiar with the Bernoulli family. All of these Bernoullis are from the same place. Jacob, Johann, and Daniel are arguably the most famous members of the family. Jacob was responsible for Bernoulli numbers, while his nephew Daniel gave us the Bernoulli principle, and Daniel's father Johann made important contributions to the development of calculus. In addition to these 3, there were 2 Nicholas Bernoullis, 2 more Johanns, and 1 more Jacob. The whole family was a dominant force in mathematics from Jacob's birth in 1654 until Johann III's death in 1807. In a curious twist, the Curie family is also related to the Bernoullis, as Pierre Curie was a descendant of Johann, and he and his wife would go on to win a Nobel Prize for their work in physics. Number 2. Philadelphia was the origin of many popular candy bars. While there may not be a real-life Willy Wonka, for a time the closest you could get to his curious factory was Philadelphia, of all places. By the beginning of the 20th century, Philadelphia was a candy powerhouse, with numerous brands starting there, including Whitman's, Peeps, Mike and Ike, Double Bubble, Good and Plenty, and Candy Corn. Hershey's was also started nearby, as were several others. So what made Philly, now notorious for cheesesteaks and cream cheese, the candy capital of America? Well, that'd be sugar. Philadelphia was a major port for the sugar trade back in the day. Molasses kept coming into the city, and refineries were set up to make refined sugar. Local refined sugar provided a new opportunity for candy makers, and it made sense to keep it all local. Number 1. Football, basketball, and hockey are all linked to Canada's McGill University. In the grand scheme of things, Canada is not usually recognized on the world stage as being a sports powerhouse outside of hockey. But despite that, Canada can lay claim to being the birthplace of not just hockey, but 2 of America's greatest pastimes, football and basketball. But it's not just Canada that claims them. All three sports were either started or chiefly innovated at the same Canadian school, McGill University. In 1874, the first football game was played at McGill against Harvard. The Harvard team liked McGill's rules so much that they took them home and shared them with Yale before they spread across the nation. Although they didn't invent hockey, McGill was the home of the first official hockey team and as such helped develop the official rules and gameplay. Most famously, basketball was invented by McGill grad James Naismith, and yes, it was in Massachusetts at the time, but McGill still laid claim to the man.